we choose to live in the desert, we are taking a risk because of the water situation. But then you have something like this come in that's going to increase the use of our precious water? No.
Nope. Hundreds of people gathered in Tucson this past week, many of them protesting plans for a massive data center project for Amazon Web Services. Construction workers showed up to support the jobs that could be created. But concerns about the water and power guzzling data centers dominated the conversation. We could see those debates across Arizona, including right here in Phoenix. Arizona Public Utilities reporter Sasha Hupka breaks down what's at stake for communities and consumers. Welcome to Square Off.
Thanks for having me.
Why are we seeing a boom in these data centers right now?
Well, you have to understand what they are. So picture a large building the size of a neighborhood, and it's just got rows and rows and rows of computer equipment. That's what's inside a data center. And these facilities are really the backbone. They're what powers every single online service we use, our email, shopping, all of those things. They need this equipment in order to function. When you think about where we are right now as a society, we're seeing the rise of artificial intelligence and other new types of technologies, and these data centers are integral to that. So that's why we're seeing so many of them suddenly popping up.
Yeah, they really power the 21st century economy based around AI. Now, what do data centers, is it data or data? I don't know, I'm going with data. What do data centers promise when they enter a community?
Well, I think that the operators usually say something along the lines of, look, we're coming here, we are creating jobs, we're creating economic opportunity, and a lot of them have pointed to very real sustainability strides that they've made in recent years, where they're saying, well, we're using less water than we ever were before, we're finding ways to recycle, we're finding ways to conserve. But I think that despite that, you see that local residents still have fierce opposition to them, and there's also very real local concerns around these massive facilities that are trying to come in and buy up land.
So let's get to that consumption. They are massive consumers of water and power. Just a couple weeks ago, I think we had a record-breaking day for power consumption in Arizona. In the Valley. Do the comparison between that power consumption and how much power is consumed by a data center.
So if you look at the state's two largest utilities, that's APS and SRP. Most people watching this probably are customers. If you look at how much power they used on that record-breaking 118-degree day, it would be nearly triple that amount of energy consumption if every data center that is in their pipeline currently asking them for service were actually allowed to build. That is a huge number.
That's almost an inconceivable number. What are utilities doing to meet or prepare for that kind of demand?
Well, there's a few things. The first thing you have to understand is that utilities were already expecting energy demand to grow. Nationwide, that is a trend. That's advanced manufacturing, that's people moving here. There's a lot of reasons why energy demand is growing. Climate change. And so they were already investing pretty heavily in upping their generation resources and upping their transmission resources in the coming years. And they're going to continue to do that. But I think the big question here is, if they are investing money in creating more energy generation, more solar plants, more natural gas, if they're investing that money, at the end of the day, they're going to come back to the consumer, their customer, and they're going to charge them for it. And so there's a question around who should be paying for that growth, and how do data centers end up paying their fair share?
And I believe APS, in a recent application for a rate increase being passed on to consumers, cited that growth.
They did, and they have some ideas, and some other utilities also have some ideas around how do they do this. One is to make the growth pay for the growth. So to tell a data center when they come in, if you want this energy and we're going to have to build a whole separate, substation or a whole separate energy generation resource for you, then you have to pay for that up front. The other idea that they included in their particular rate case was the idea of a bill minimum. So to say, if you're a data center who comes and says, I need 700 megawatts of energy, and then you only use 300, they would say, no, you said you needed 700 megawatts per month. We gave you 700 megawatts per month, even if you didn't use it. So you have to pay for that full 700 megawatts.
And what about the water piece? They need a lot of water to cool these plants. Are cities, communities, the state prepared for this? We just had a story on, again, sinking levels at Lake Powell, groundwater vanishing. Are we prepared for this?
This is definitely something that we're seeing coming up as cities increasingly, like Phoenix and Mesa, increasingly put some barriers around these data centers coming in. And you know, they do use water. They've said that they've become more sustainable over time, and they point to some specific examples of water recycling and other things. But you know, there's basically two ways they can cool these things. They can either use more power and cool it with an air conditioner, or they can use water, and they have to run them 24/7.
Yeah, I know in the Tucson example, the Amazon Web Services, they're planning to use reclaimed water, recycled water, which Phoenix is now getting into, and I think plans to build a second recycled water plant, perhaps in anticipation of this. I want to go back to the consumer part. How likely is it that consumers are going to have to foot the bill? We might see our bills rise anyways because of growth and climate change, as you cited, but how likely is it that consumers are going to have to pay for data centers as well?
I think that's an open question. I think that we're going to really see kind of the attitude that the Corporation Commission will take toward this, which are the state utility regulators. We'll see what they do with APS's case. I think that you know, the utilities have largely made the point of, okay, right now we don't see that the consumer is paying for this growth yet. But I think there's the question of when that breaking point will be, and if somebody actually puts some guardrails around it before that happens. But the data centers would also tell you they don't even know if a rate design is necessary. They point to studies that they say in other parts of the country they haven't seen this trend yet.
The city of Phoenix recently adopted an ordinance putting new rules. One of the things we haven't talked around data centers, we haven't talked about the noise factor. How serious is that if you're near one?
That has been a concern that's come up a lot on the local level. And again, I think this is something where data centers would say, look, we're making strides with that, we're making strides with that. But the reality is that in a lot of other states where they've seen big data center booms, like we are seeing now, noise pollution has been a serious concern from local communities. You know, there's also for local officials a very real question around the fire risk of these facilities. There's been a lot of firefighters who have said, you know, these are huge facilities. They're filled with batteries and other very flammable materials. And if they catch on fire, getting access to them and navigating through these giant facilities will be very difficult for us. So I think there's real concerns there.
And that's one more cost we would have to account for. They have to have the equipment, the training to prepare to deal with a data center fire. Has there been one that you're aware of to date?
Not that I'm aware of to date. But
still new. Do you know how long the list is right now of companies that want to get in here, or data centers?
Between APS and SRP, there are dozens. And I also think it's worth noting in terms of the utility strategy for dealing with this, they are already serving some data centers. You may have seen some up around town. There's a few kind of in the Levine area. There's a few over in East Phoenix and other areas of the valley. Those are small potatoes compared to the ones we're talking about. Those are smaller or medium-sized data centers. We haven't seen the really massive ones yet. This Project Blue down in Tucson, which is causing quite a ruckus down there, is really probably the largest one we've seen so far.
And if you want to get an idea of just one data center, you pointed out there's one along the 202 around 40th Street. That's just one data center.
Yes,
right?
Correct. And you can see it right off the highway, and it's big. When you go by, it looks big, but in the data center world, that one actually isn't necessarily one of the massive ones. So
no.
It'll be very interesting to see as you know, those pipelines continue to grow, exactly how long it will take for some of those really big ones to come to fruition here in the Phoenix area.
Well, the Tucson model, I think, is several data centers that size, the size of the one along the 202, all bunched together in an area. And it also makes me wonder, I know Phoenix is taking steps, but where would these conglomerations of data centers even go in the city of Phoenix?
Well, you think about Phoenix, I mean, it's big, it's long. You've got some room probably down in like the Levine area by South Mountain. I know that there were a few that were trying to locate there. You think about North Phoenix and up by where TSMC is. I mean, one of the things that's drawing these facilities here is that we have a lot of land availability. And even if not in the cities, in some of the unincorporated parts, you know, outside city limits and unincorporated county limits.
Got to end it there. Sasha Hupka, thanks so much for joining us.
Thanks.
And that's our show for this week. Thanks to all of our guests. Thank you so much for joining us. We'll see you back here next weekend for another round of Sunday Square Off.